Hello, I'm Steve Ryder and welcome back to Racing Weekly, a podcast and YouTube show brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. I'm joined on this episode by Richard Hoiles and Lydia Hislop to preview the Derby meeting at Epsom. It's a shame that Rishi isn't here. I know that he still thinks that the Derby is the main race of the whole racing calendar. But Richard, I'll come to you first. The first Derby that I went to was 2011, Pourmoir's Derby, and that infamous line of commentary.
Well, yes, although to be fair, I was just covering my backside really, because for those of you who don't remember, it was the celebration, the premature celebration of Mikel Barcelona. And when you sort of are commentating, you sort of have this wide angle where you sort of take in as much as you can, and gradually as it gets close to the line, you narrow until sometimes you can be just looking at noses, and just as you're sort of focusing in, this Frenchman stood up in the saddle and started looking at me, and you flinch. And by that time they'd gone past the post, and I hadn't a clue whether he'd won or not. So I just thought, I'll blame him if he hasn't. So he celebrates as if he won the Derby, but I haven't a clue whether he has or not. It wasn't bizarre. I've got a picture of the photo finish where he is standing up and looking up at me with his whip in the air. It's bizarre finish. That was your first one, yeah?
That was my first. What was your first? Commentary-wise?
Commentary-wise, I think was Criskin or North Light, whichever way round those two were. Actually, there was Sindar.
Yeah.
I was just after the winning line. That was the first Derby I'd worked on and part of the CCTV. But as a South London lad, then Epsom was when you went to fly your kite and kick a football around, and sometimes you kicked it over onto this bizarre sort of set of running rails well before I was interested in racing, with this pristine green bit of ground that you sort of looked left and right and checked over the fence and got your ball back. So it was the sort of green space for South London, which is why Rishi is also so keen on it, really, because Epsom does have that wide sort of circle.
It does. It's often described as the ultimate test for a thoroughbred.
Yeah.
Does that still?
I think it does.
Yeah.
I think it really does, because you need to have tactical speed to be able to attain and hold your position. You need to be able to stay thoroughly, because it tests that. You know, the camber and the turn down as well at Tattenham Corner, I think tests your balance and your agility. So yeah, I think I mean, people often say if you ripped up the the race programme, you wouldn't run the Derby there. I absolutely would run the Derby there every single day of the week. I think it's a fabulous race and a fabulous test.
Don't you think that's always the case, though, that everyone would turn everything into vanilla if you
Exactly.
started again? It would be.
Yeah.
Well, Jill Alliance says the same about the Guineas, doesn't he? You can't believe that the Guineas is round at Newmarket with the dip and everything.
So I think that's sort of, I went to Sedgefield for the first time in ages, and the fences are still like that, and the hurdles are still like that. But isn't that a test of those sort of horses, rather than flat ovals of 10 furlongs round and, makes it much fun.
It's the key thing about our sport in Britain, isn't it? It is the different topographies, and it's also a part of getting an edge as a punter as well, isn't it? But understanding that element, because I think that element of knowing a track and how a horse might be benefited or unsuited by it, I think is often a key part that is overlooked and can give you an edge if you really understand that.
Definitely. And Aidan O'Brien in recent years with Derby trials sends a lot of his horses to Chester and Lingfield to try and get that configuration of the track to see if they're going to handle those unique demands.
Something trickier, yeah, exactly. So it's just to see how agile and balanced they are, essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
Course and distance form is something that I work a lot in with my tip inside. I know for you, trainer form is something that you hold a lot of stead with. And Ed Walker just had an unbelievable weekend. I'm hoping that you followed your own tactic.
Yeah, I think, look, this what's widen out, because trainer form splits opinion. There are some people that don't believe in it at all. And I fully understand that, because if you want it to be statistically proven to the level that people who rely on statistics want it to be, then by the time it is statistically proven, everybody knows about it. So the point I've always found is that if you can look at the nuances, and stable form isn't whether they're healthy or not. It's something that impacts a whole yard. That can be a change of personnel, change of gallops. It can be anything that causes a set of horses to run better for a period of time. And sometimes it can be deliberate. Nigel Twiston-Davis, Peter Bowen, as was Mickey Bowen during the summer. That's when they target certain periods. And we operate in a handicap system where they go up and come down. Yes, there is natural variance, 100%. Ed Walker will probably never have another weekend like that, and now everyone will jump on his horses and they'll start shorter. But the key fact I find is that people forget when trainers were in and out of form, and that's where I've, over the last decade, specialised, to my mind. So anything that is being handicapped currently from David Monissier's yard, due to accident, is almost certain to be well handicapped, because unfortunately for David, they're just not running very well. Richard Fahey's 2-year-olds could have a great time in nurseries because they've run deplorably early on, some quite good, well-bred horses. But people forget that, and 6 months down the line, when they look at the form book, they don't remember it. So if you can sort of ident in your database when horses were, for trainers you believe, in and out of form. So yeah, I'm a big believer in it. In fact, after distance and ground, it would be the third most likely thing I would like to know if you were restricting my access to data, if you like.
Yeah, and we'll be touching on one of Ed Walker's stable stars in our first section, which is a racing recap. So we'll start off the action at Sandown on Thursday, the highlight being Almaqam in the Brigadier Gerard Stakes. Ended the unbeaten record of Ombudsman. Lydia, how impressed were you with the performance?
I was really impressed. It was a change of tactics as well, wasn't it, going to the front, and I thought that he found plenty. I mean, he was a horse that shaped really well over the course and distance in the Gordon Richards. It looked like physically as well that he's going to have a very good year. He looks like he's grown into his frame. I wasn't there on Thursday, but I was there to see him make his seasonal debut. I also thought he'd come on for the run. I thought he showed enough in what was quite a deep edition of that race, albeit a bit messy late on. And this time around, I mean, I thought he was really good. And I thought he turned away Ombudsman quite readily, actually. I think he was well on top at the finish. And interestingly, Ed Walker was quite disappointed with him after the Gordon Richards, whereas I just thought he looked rusty that day and that he would come on for it. So yeah, I mean, I think he's going to have a big season. This sort of middle distance older horse division is warming up really nicely, isn't it? Yeah,
it is. Well, yeah, we touched on the Prince of Wales. Both of these may well have the target as. If you look at what the handicap has done this morning, Almaqam up £1 to 117 and Ombudsman up £5 to 117. So obviously in receipt of a little bit of weight from Ombudsman, the handicapper has them bang on.
Yeah, and I think what I liked about the race when I looked at it was they separated into their component parts for me. You had the exposed Group 3 listed horses finishing 3rd, 4th and 5th. You had 2 horses that looked better than that level coming clear. I think if I was the trainer of Ombudsman, I'd go away thinking I might just improve slightly for the run, and whether Almaqam was slightly better positioned tactically as well, and I think Ed Walker's horses are in really good form. So there might be ways that I would feel I would get close, so I was positive about both of the front 2, while still thinking at the moment they were still just a touch short from top level Group 1 company. But as Lydia said, I'm not sure we've got top level Group 1 company in this division this year, so it's very, very open. But the 2, they were the right 2, and I didn't see any reason to doubt the form in the way it panned out.
The only thing I was thinking about the runner-up was, he, in my mind, he could go 2 different ways, in that he still looks a bit raw, doesn't he? He isn't quite channeling. And is that because he can't or won't, or is he actually going to be able to build that? Because he is still relatively inexperienced, and this was the first time he'd have been in really deep.
Yes, because I think he was a very short price favourite for those 2 wins in France. The slight concern for me was when he was held in the last 75 yards, the head just came up and went to one side. At the moment, I'm prepared to allow that it was fitness, but I do take the point that the demeanour wasn't 100%, but he improved to challenge okay, so I was prepared to believe it might be tiredness, but you're right, it would be a question mark if it happened again off the back of a run. Yeah. That would be a potential concern, maybe.
Yeah, I think if you look at the sectional data, I think Ombudsman was quicker, 3 furlongs, 2 furlongs.
He'd done a bit of running to get there.
Yes.
But I thought Sheen Murphy was perfect. I mean, the finishing speed percentage of 100%, literally to the dot. His sectional times were absolutely fab.
And he wasn't taken on either. It wasn't a sit and sprint by any means, so I'm not trying to suggest that he pinched it. But yeah, tactically he was in a slightly better Sandown position probably than Ombudsman. Yeah. But the point is, the 2 of them are nice horses going forward. It's not a race to overcomplicate. Those in behind just aren't quite good enough. Yeah. You know, with the nicest possible, I'd still quite like to own a Group 3 listed winner, but in the context of what we might be talking about at highest level, they've come up a little bit short.
Yeah, and the highest level next for both of them is going to be the Prince of Wales Stakes. If we quickly look through the betting with Bet365, Los Angeles, Tassel Gold Cup winner, 4-1, Economics, 5-1. Haven't seen him yet this season. Anmart, who won the Champion Stakes last year, 11-2, Map of Stars, 11-2, and then you get into Almaqam, 7-1, Kalpana, 8-1, and Ombudsman, 8-1. It's a really interesting division without there being a star, but actually as a betting heat, I can't wait to.
Yeah, it's going to be really good to see who goes where. I mean, I'm a big Los Angeles fan. When I saw him in the Derby last year, where he did so many different things wrong, and he was the kind of horse that physically you think, okay, you're going to be better next year, but also he kind of lost his head. He got very sweaty. He did lots of things wrong, and he still managed to finish 3rd. So I quite enjoyed watching his progress last season, whilst thinking you're going to be a better 4-year-old. I do think he's going to be better over a 1.5 miles, but he has surprised me so far this season, and he's really gritty as well now. So I like him a lot, but I think he might be vulnerable here. Might be.
Yeah. I liked the run of Anmark last time. I thought, like Ombudsman, came to there and then probably fitness told. But yeah, can't wait for this race.
Yeah, I mean, the fact we're talking 4-1 the field. I mean, sometimes we're very good, aren't we, with racing? We knock everything and say, number of odds on favourites. Then we get 4-1 the field and say, oh, it's no standout horse, no good. No superstar, well, no low par. But in actual fact, from a betting, fascinating race. They all line up with the draw and things like that. It's going to be great. And in a way, there's a couple of divisions that are like this during the course of the year. The mile division appeals to that as well. I think you're talking about 9-2 the field for the Queen Anne after what went on in the Lockinge. And in actual fact, that's actually really quite refreshing. We can have the odd superstar, it's really nice to have, but open divisions when we can all put up loads of different horses. Is White Birch potential or not?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
and he was slightly unlucky, wasn't he?
He was a little bit. As you say, the fact is with him and Los Angeles, you're not quite sure whether all of the criteria get ticked, and that's why it's open, because you're thinking maybe a mile and a half for a couple. Maybe the draw as well, might play a part as well.
And then there's that economics, and how is he after coming back?
Yeah, because he would have been out of that list if we'd gone back, 9 months. Yeah. Probably he would have been the one that you thought could be the 2-1 fav with everything else.
Yeah, on the back of that Irish champion stage,
Yeah.
I mean, he looked like a superstar, but you just have that slight reservation around obviously bleeding and
yes, absolutely, and
well-being.
Both of those things. But they're persisting with him. He's with William Hackers. I'm sure they can bring him back. And again, I think that sort of the testing ground probably exposed that weakness that he has. But it's not the first time it's happened to him either. He's done it before.
That's the slight concern, isn't it? Is that sort of? And my memory fails me terribly 12 months ago. But were we still talking about economics as a Derby horse right on the run up
on the back of the Dante, it was all around whether he was going to get supplemented.
Apart from William Hackers said right at the start, I'm not running him in the Derby.
No,
right from the very word go.
Yes, that's right. He stuck to his guns.
Yeah.
And almost certainly correctly, the way that race turned out to be run.
Yes.
So, but we were talking about him as the second coming after the Dante, which of course now we're seeing that Prince of Wales' estate's just over a year, and we're talking 4-1 the field, and includes him.
Yeah. Talking of horses we thought might be the second coming, Opera Ballo, after his 2 wins at Kempton, everyone was putting the same things as notable speech last year. Kind of blotted his copybook in the Craven, but was much better here despite racing keenly in the early stages.
Those 3 were words, despite racing keenly, isn't it, with him? He's yet to completely win me over, and that's not really his fault. There is that notable speech concept. We would have dismissed before notable speech 2 all-weather wins as being of limited worth going into the trial for the Guineas. And he did run far too keen. He did run pretty keenly the other day. And to be fair to him, what I would say was his strength at the finish was quite commendable, given how hard he had pulled. But it's a mile division that I think is strong. And Godolphin have got to decide what they're going to do, because you've got Shadow of Light waiting in the wings, who I'm convinced, is a sprinter. So I'm quite keen that Opera Ballo steps up and fills that void, because when Ruling Court was going for the Derby, you're thinking, they might run Shadow of Light once more at a mile before they, well, in my opinion, see the light. That might be unfair. Maybe he will stay a mile, but Field of Gold looked good, didn't he? And looked solid, and Juddmonte could always stick in something to go a little bit faster, which wouldn't suit Shadow of Light, but would suit Opera Ballo maybe. I just think he's not quite there yet. Come the end of the season, it might be more interesting, but he does have to settle, doesn't he? And
it's going to be a much bigger test of that, isn't it, at Royal Ascot? So to me, I think that is his Achilles heel at the moment. Yeah. And the St James's Palace, again, even the draw there could go wrong for him in 2 different ways.
Well,
too much daylight, or stuck getting cover somewhere. That often happens on the round course there. So I don't know. I feel like he's a level below what is required at this stage.
Yeah, his horse I wanted to take on, I'd back Bay City Roller, and when he came upsides Opera Ballo, with how keen Opera Ballo had been, I thought, right, here we go, there's only going to be one winner here, and then he just went away. It really impressed me at the finish.
Yeah, that was good. The horse that I really liked in that was Jackknife, I'm thinking, because he was locked up on the inside just behind the winner, wasn't he? And you could see that Asheen Murphy was looking, and there was just no way out, and he had to concede first probably and second run to the winner, and he came through, again, not knocked about because he got no chance of winning, managed to snatch third. He surprised me, because I saw him make his debut at Epsom. That's traditionally not a very strong race. It looked like it was a relatively good edition of it in April, and he's sort of come on a lot from that, because I think he's going to be quite decent.
Yeah, and the point being that we hadn't seen him until April, if you know what I mean. So he definitely. Just when they pulled him out, he lacked the knowledge to then pick up.
Yes.
But he got lost for about 200 yards, maybe not quite so long as that, and then picked up. Like you, Lydia, I like him. Just whether did you feel as a supporter of Bay City Road he quite stayed?
I thought a bit of the opposite, to be honest.
I
thought whether going up in trip would actually help him, because I thought he travelled into the race. I'm willing to forgive. I mean, it sounds harsh forgiving him that effort, but I thought conceding weight as well to Opera Ballo. I thought he travelled in like a really good horse, and whether going up to, let's say, 10 furlongs on his next start might just see him to better.
I suppose he might have needed it as well. Because
it was a long time off from that Champagne victory. Just with you both on the show with regards to Royal Ascot, St James's Palace Stakes, I think these milers, it's just a fascinating division. You've got Field of Gold 4-5, Henri Matisse 7-2, Shadow of Light, currently favourite for the Commonwealth Cup as well, Cosmic Year 8-1, John Cool 10-1. They could all have different options. With regards to Guineas winners coming here, who would you be with? Or are you looking at a bigger price?
I think I'd be with Field of Gold. I just thought that turn of foot that he showed was pretty special, and that'll be really suitable for Ascot.
Yeah, it's only if he gets drawn one at Royal Ascot. I think that's going to be the big on that round course. But
yeah, I think Juddmonte will be clever, because when I saw him, I was working the day he won in Ireland. And when I saw that he'd won and Juddmonte had put 3 in, I was thinking, well, what you've done is you've stopped it being the steadily run race at Newmarket. Yeah. But in actual fact, it was every bit as slow to halfway. The things that were in your favour, in defence of Kieran Schumacher, you've had one more run under your belt, so you know you're not going to make the same mistake again, irrespective of who'd ridden it. You don't have a dip, and you probably have a slightly substandard field compared to Newmarket. So those 3 things mean you sweep away. But it was, as you said, Lydia, that turn of foot. Stamped him. He may stay 10 because you might be able to sit on it, but that's a mileless turn of foot for mine. Yeah. There's plenty of speed, and you can counteract draw 1 by just splitting the race apart a little bit, by entering a couple of Juddmonte horses and making sure they spread out, I think, anyway.
Yeah, and hopefully they will. I made exactly the same assumption, and then I went to watch it and
I thought, no, that isn't how the Irish Guinness So either it's a very poor bit of pacemaking, or the horse wasn't in there as a pacemaker, to be fair. I'm not sure which.
I mean, in fairness, they said Windlord was running on its merits, and you kind of go, yeah,
exactly. Yeah. That's right, and he did.
But my concern was that he was drawn out wide, and Colin Keane went, I'm riding this with confidence. I don't care. I've got no cover, and I'm still going to win the race.
I suppose the interesting thing going forward is he's probably had that one extra run because of what went on at Newmarket. If he won at Newmarket, I don't think he'd have run in Ireland, but I think you'd have got your classic. Which is the race you miss, given it's Juddmonte? Because John Gosden had said Eclipse. But is that going to be a very busy period? And would you, after winning this, skip the Eclipse? Because you'd want to run at York, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
For sure, with it being the international. So that's the one that I'm slightly questioning whether they would then take that in as well.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because that was the race that they were talking about
exactly
right at the start of the season. So but events, dear boy, things change. Plans have to change.
You look at some horses and you think, stepping up to 10 furlongs, you're going to improve. Looking at Field of Gold, I don't think he's going to improve for the 10 furlongs, but I think he will stay.
Yeah.
The key point, unlike Opera Ballo, is that you feel that you could probably conserve what would still be quite a decent turn of foot for a quarter of a mile longer, and that makes him quite versatile. But rather than a 10 furlong horse that had lost the Guineas because he was a 10 furlong horse, I was left with the impression after Ireland that wasn't the case. He was a genuine miler.
Yes.
And it was the delayed challenge, or, the 10, better horses really. Ruling Court was just better.
I think the better horses point is a good one there. Yeah.
You're catching something that's running faster, than anything was capable of running in the Irish 2000, but you still showed that. You had a really good turn of foot. Yeah.
Talking to the best horse in the race, Estrange was definitely the best horse in the race of the Leicester Piggott Pinnacle Filly Stakes. Yeah. She's now earned quotes of 16-1 with Bet365 for the Arc. She looked something special.
She did. I mean, it's another 3-4 stages, isn't it? Isn't it the Arc as compared to that? But the positive thing is she looks very uncomplicated, isn't she? She bounced out. She immediately settled. She sort of bowled along, went through the race, brought out wide. There was a sense of inevitability, and suddenly inside the final furlong, she absolutely mullered them. So it was an impressive performance. She's still very, very lightly raced as well, isn't she? Totally unexposed at the 1.5 miles. So, and you feel that is her métier. You know, that is what she is going to be best at. So I think she's very, very exciting. She's got an Irish Pretty Polly entry. You know, I'd rather be exploring that 1.5 mile route with her.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Lydia's done enough TV to know, you know, that from a terrestrial audience, it's like sort of the poster girl, isn't it? It's a sort of slightly demure, spindly-looking grey thing that just chimes in and absolutely annihilates them, and had done so on our Sunday coverage on her debut. She did it. It was a Sunday series meeting, I think, or it was. We were certainly covering racing from Goodwood, and she was unraced. That was August of last year. So a bit like we were making the point about Jackknife. We haven't seen her for long. However, there does need to be a big dose of reality check as to what she achieved on the weekend.
Yeah.
They quickened a fair way out. She was left with nothing much in front of her that was going to create her any different. And if you look at Shahar and Chorus in particular, you know, who is yet to really break through at listed level, it's great, but 16-1 for the Arc is based on potential, and the fact bookmakers know that punters will, who hit their hearts rather than the form book, will be all over her.
Yeah.
Where'd you go? 1.5 miles, Filly's only race? I was trying to think on the way in. I couldn't think of anything.
Yorkshire Oaks would be the obvious one.
Yes, I suppose that's true.
But they're quite close together this year, closer together than normal. I don't know whether she'd have to take her racing well, and we've only seen her 4 times, is it, in Certainly in Her Life? The other thing we don't know is whether she likes fast ground. Now, it was only her second start, and she was thrown into listed company at Yarmouth, and when she encountered it. But it could also have been the ground. I'm fairly open-minded about it at the moment, but we know that she handles cut.
So I think I probably, if she was mine, she's probably running the most valuable race ever, and I'd go out the window, but I'd be looking for a Group 2 stepping stone still, I think. And I don't know what those options are actually at 1.5 miles for fillies and mares. I meant to look up when I came in, but
you know, Lancashire Oaks would be
Lancashire Oaks would be, Lancashire Oaks would be sensible, I think, for me, and you'd have time to take that in
very much
on the way.
Very much so.
But yeah, that would be the next stepping stone. I just feel that I'd like to see her win again. That Yarmouth blowout just sits a little bit, you know, in terms of she looked wonderful at Goodwood. She looked wonderful again at the end of the season. She is very capable.
I just couldn't get over how uncomplicated she was. No noseband, just the most simple bridle you've ever seen in your life. And she walked back into the parade ring, into the winners' enclosure, and just basically stood there like a lamb. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was going to be very popular, as you say.
She is, that's right. I mean, you know, I can see the production meeting now. Strange. Into the break, Strange.
You discussed the form there, but it did receive a boost previously. Shahar, obviously, who beat Scenic last time, and Scenic then went on to win the Bronte Cup, beat last year's winner, Term of Endearment. It was a bit of a slowly run race, a bit of a sprint finish at the end, but again, it was a good race to watch. Yeah,
it was fine. I'd upgrade Scenic slightly, as you say. I thought Term of Endearment had the run of the race, but it had its level for me. Nothing disrespectful about it, but I wouldn't be taking anything particularly out of it to improve massively. So yes, it underpins maybe Shahar's performance, if you like, or the level of performance, although there would have been the question mark for the trip, I suppose, change for Shahar. But fundamentally, good, solid, those sort of horses meet pretty regularly.
Yeah, we mentioned Yorkshire Oaks. I think she's got a good form at York, hasn't she? I think she won the Galtres last year.
She did, yeah. I mean, it's interesting that both of her best performances have come there. I thought she did well to run down a horse that had an easy lead. That was the best bit about this performance, and she's definitely better than she was. She might be contrast to Estrange. I mean, she's completely untried with cutting the ground, so that would be an unknown if she's going to be encountering that. And she does have quite a skimming action. So, I mean, I know those things aren't necessarily, sometimes like we can overstate that, you know, some horses that look like they need soft ground actually don't. But, you know, until it's proven, that would be a question mark for me.
Yeah. Back to 10 Bob Tony, won the John of Gaunt Stakes. Survived a steward's inquiry. It would have been an interesting steward's inquiry, I think, if it was a nose rather than a head, to see if the stewards have really changed their perception on interference, I suppose.
Yeah, I agree, because he did shift across, and but I also feel that it was the right decision myself on the day, even with that. You know, addressing how they look at things. You know, I still think it was the right decision, and it was. I mean, he's been gelded. He's always been a horse that's got a lot of talent. Very flashy looking horse. He'd be another one for terrestrial TV.
Commentator's friend though. Big stocks, don't lose him in the middle of the night, do you? So.
But I mean, it was a huge run from Kinross, wasn't it? You know, with the penalty for the Park Stakes win. I mean, that's at his age, that's really encouraging for his season, because look, I don't feel like he's he was at his absolute peak last season, but he wasn't far off it when he won the Park, and the Park was a deeper race than it can often be last year. And because I was operating on the basis last season that Kinross was still a Group 1 performer, solid, but not quite what he was a couple of seasons earlier. Now I'm not so sure. I think he that signals that he's going to be able to operate at this level. But I think absolutely at 7 furlongs. I think the days of 6 furlongs, the younger legs are just a bit too quick for him.
And that's why I was quite surprised he appeared, actually, because I couldn't quite see where you go. The 7 furlong races are all in that little cluster, aren't they, towards the end of the season. You've now got Group 1, of course, with City of York, which I'm sure is where he would head. But if you now plot a path, where do you go without going back to sprint trips?
Yeah, it's difficult.
Then do you sour a decent reappearance because you're not quite fast enough anymore, as you say, to keep up with Shadow of Light, and so as a result, then you've wasted that promise of the return, because absolutely the standout performance in that race for mine.
Yeah, and he was pretty much the first off my list, given his reappearance record. And then when he came looming up out on the outside, I was like, oh, I've definitely got you wrong. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting end to the season, I think, for him.
And we'll talk about it with regards to the Derby for the Dante, but one thing from a training form perspective is how Rafe Beckett's season has begun to turn in the last 2 to 3 weeks. A lot of the first up disappointments in Derby trials, or trials generally from Beckett's, we'd had Rosen, I think it was only half an hour before, or day before Pride of Arras won.
Yeah.
And
Smokin'.
Smokin', thank
yeah.
you. Yes, he's the owner, isn't he, Mr. Rosen?
Yeah. I'm seeing where you're going.
These days it's just a word association. But yeah, in terms of you thinking, I just mark that down as seeing another Beckett horse that hasn't quite fulfilled, because he was steady last year as well. People forget how slow they were to come to hand. And then when that won the Dante, you're thinking, well, that's a bit of an outlier. And since then, they've gradually run better and better and better. And so Kinross turning up, when you think, well, he's a good, solid benchmark horse if he's running well this stage of the season.
I'd go a mile with him, frankly, in the meantime. If rather than, I wouldn't be bothering going down anymore. I think
it's a failure of the 7 furlong division, isn't it? In the sense we've now got the centrepiece of it, but there isn't anything building up to. You have the Park, the Challenge, the City of York, all within that 6-week period.
Well, that's like the two fillies races that we discussed that were 17 minutes apart. I think, and were basically identical, other than 2 furlongs.
Yes, that's true. Pre-Morris Dick East for him, would that be a 6.5?
Yeah, that is isn't it too close to the City of York? He'd rather go to the City of York.
Yes, if that is close, that would be too close, wouldn't it? But that's sort of where you just want to squeeze those out a little bit. There might be other races abroad that I haven't been aware of.
Yeah, you could go globe-trotting exactly with him. I wonder about that. That'd be an interesting thing to do. I think maybe at that time of year. Yeah. But like you, I can't think of it. International race.
It's those races that Godolphin go and farm with horses. You know what I mean? That they rock up in Canada for no disrespect. We've had again, I can't think of her name, the William Haggis horse that went at Choisier.
Yes.
That rocked up and won somewhere.
Yeah.
Grade 1, and no disrespect, she's a nice filly, but you're thinking, wow, that's a good bit of placing. You found that. Yeah. Don't know whether you could do that with Kinross. I don't know. No. Yeah, any history of travelling actually, Kinross has. He's been to France probably, but
yeah, I don't think he has. I can't think of it.
Yeah. No. Anyway, sorry, we're on tangent there, but basically, right. there's not an obvious UK destination. I didn't think for him, unless you're going to go down the tried and trusted July Cup route.
Yeah, there's the Lennox is probably the
yes, and so that's So
he didn't really. He wasn't effective in the July Cup last year, was he?
No, and that's when I thought, like you, 7 furlongs. Yeah. But that performance was good.
Yeah. You touch on going abroad. You've given me the perfect segue into the Prix de Jockey Club. Camille Pissarro. Described as Michael Table, described them as the best horse, the best trainer and the best jockey. Ryan Moore has got lots of plaudits for the ride. Was it as good as everyone was saying at the time?
Where Ryan and others excel they have the confidence in big races not to make a manoeuvre that will lose them the race, in the hope that something will appear that enables them to win the race. And the Breeders' Cup, was it Auguste Rodin? Was it Auguste Rodin on the inside?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
There must come a point where you are so pocketed that your only chance of winning the race is to hope that it opens up. And you know that if it doesn't, you're going to go to the line in a Classic or a Group 1 with a lap full of horse, with all of the vitriol that's going to get you on social media. Whereas some people who will try and find a way out, they will get a bump, they won't win, but at least I tried to get out. And that's the difference for me, is sitting inside and having the confidence to wait And that's what makes him a great rider. And you could actually trace that all the way back to when he didn't have a Group 1 record. And in the Eclipse at Sandown, not now Cato, he came stand side. A move that could have backfired and arguably, given what happened later in the day, made no difference at all because something won down the far side. But he had the confidence in himself and his game plan to execute it. And that's where he had the best ride by a shadow of a doubt. But again, I mean, Lydia, I know, is champion of the middle distance division. This is where the French Derby has sort of fallen apart, really, because half length, neck, short head, test of speed, off the bend.
Quite.
And that's not a middle distance race to my mind. It made Camille Pissarro try and trip, I think, for the first time.
Yes, he was, yeah.
It's an open up sprint, big division. No longer that first run. We talk about Epsom. It's that climb for the first 2 furlongs. That changes the dynamic of the race at Chantilly. You don't have that long run anymore. It's speed, and it becomes an elongated mile race with some funny results.
Yeah, dreadful decision.
And that's what probably suited Camille Pissarro, wasn't it? Trinity College in there as his buddy, in order to then set exact fractions. And there was a nice picture afterwards of Christophe Soumillon giving him a pat, because obviously he rode him in the French Guineas and said, no, I think you should probably go for the French Derby. I think it will suit him well, and so it transpired. Yeah,
I think how Richard described what made that ride, it was absolutely spot on. I've got nothing to add to that, but yeah, it's definitely a test of speed. I mean, this is a horse that was tried as a sprinter. You know, for his first 5 or 6 starts as a 2-year-old, didn't go above 6.5 furlongs. So he did improve. He's the dam has produced sprinters. So he bloomed in the Jean-Luc Lagardère, didn't he? But I if he was going back to 10 furlongs, I'd have my doubts. I think there are horses here that will be able to test him and whether he can actually fully see it out. And the dreadful decision I was referring to was the decision to drop the Prix de Jockey for a mile and a half to an extended 10.
It is. It's not. We have 10 furlong races in the calendar, plenty of them.
Yeah.
But this is meant to be. If the Derby is a mile and a half trip. I'm sorry, and you can call it something else, and you can introduce a different race if you want to. But it's you just look at the winners. And the interesting thing with Camille Pissarro is, in actual fact, they were taking ground back off him at the end. He wasn't as if he sprinted away.
Yes, quite.
He went a length clear, and then I think the winning margin was it was half a length, wasn't it? The cavalry coming back again.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I loaded the Bet365 prices for the Eclipse and couldn't quite believe that it was 6-1 when you've got the likes of Calandagan at 5-1 and Sosi at 5-1. I thought that was very short.
Yeah, agreed.
We'll kind of go for anything else. Trawlerman, I suppose we should probably touch on in the Henry II. The Stayers division now looks more open, obviously, with the retirement of Kyprios. I thought he was good. Anthelio, I thought, was good in the National Stakes at Sandown. Anything else kind of catch your eye?
Yeah, just not a random one, but I was at Windsor last night, and a horse called American Golf, 2-year-olds. Sort of, as I get older, I find the 2-year-old race is the hardest to call. So last year I decided I would follow all the 2-year-old races early in the season, because that way you had some friends rather than some unknown 20-runner Queen Marys and what have you, so you'd know a few. American Golf was the first runner of the season for Paul and Oliver Cole. Now, I go back further than both of you, but you'll remember Paul, in his pomp, had Dillon. He had 3 winners, I think, of the Coventry. And the key was these horses, Dillon was enormous, and they turned up looking. And American Golf was a really nice-looking horse. And I was surprised they hadn't had a 2-year-old runner, 150 grand, popped out, got to the rail from an outside gate, made all, won well. Little bit tight maybe to go to Ascot, but I think they probably will. But I thought that was the most promising 2-year-old race of the week. And Thelia was a great story, but it wasn't a great race. And I don't mean that in any way detrimentally.
Yeah.
There's a line of form through there with the 4th place Carl horse that was beaten, I think it's called Clear Look, who'd been beaten by what looked a good horse in Dickensian when we all saw at Musselburgh, thinking that's a really good early season, and that hasn't turned out to be the case at all. That form line isn't as good as it looked. And fair play, cost £6,000 was sold to Midland Park after the first run. Yeah. But yeah, so American Golf probably would be my one.
The National Stakes needs to have a good, strong edition as well, because it's on at risk of losing its
Is
listed
it?
status. Yeah, so let's hope that actually does work out. But like you, I have my doubts about whether it will. I thought Tournaman was very good. Obviously, he likes Ascot a lot, and now with Kyprios sadly retired, that would be he would seem to be the heir apparent. Yeah, it was a great tussle between him and Kyprios last year. I thought it was a great race. Sweet William, though, I thought ran really well in the Yorkshire Cup with everything against him. But I don't really see why Tournaman shouldn't account for him as he has done in the past. Candelari coming over for the Ascot Gold Cup will be really, really interesting. And then you've got Illinois and a horse we're going to talk about a bit later, Jan Bruegel, potentially those two for Aidan O'Brien. So the Ascot Gold Cup, I think, although we haven't got Kyprios, was a huge shame. There are some new younger horses in the mix, and Tournaman and Sweet William are representing the old guard. So that's going to be pretty good, I think. And I just want to mention Tadej. The only interesting thing, the interesting thing for me about that was when he ran fifth in what was quite a deep novice, I think, at York during the Dante meeting. That day, Archie Watson got a number of really good chances, and he was really, really strong on this horse and sort of saying, I think this is my best chance of the day. And then obviously he only finished fifth. He was marooned a little bit away from the rest of the field and looked like he was just too green and couldn't go through the race properly. So it's not surprised me now that he's popped up, and clearly that horse is highly regarded from an operation that very much know what they're doing in that direction.
Yeah, although strangely enough, as you say about Strangers, that was only his second 2-year-old winner of the season of 29 runners. And Tadej, before running at Ascot, was touted as being good. Both times, you're quite right, been caught on the flank both times and had hung away from the rest of the field. Could be a good example, again, Archie Watson, of those early 2-year-olds might not be quite as bad as they look if there's been an underlying reason as to why they haven't quite performed. I was slightly disappointed that Tadej might have blown the mark for what I thought would be one more blowout and you're going to be in nursery company. I think he's better than that. And it'd be interesting to see whether Archie's 2-year-olds pick up, or whether some days you just don't get a great bunch. You're leading them all at home. You look like the superstar, and unfortunately the rest of them aren't that quick.
Yeah, and then you've got 3 quick runs into 40-1 with Bet365 for the Coventry Stakes, and probably is entitled to go there on the back of that.
Yeah, I think so. And it's just more, Archie Watson isn't the kind of person to, talk up his horses. No. That's unusual behaviour. That's the reason why it stuck in my head.
Yeah, excellent. And that brings to an end this week's edition of Racing Recap. Before we get into our Epsom preview, just to let you know that our sponsor Bet365 have a best odds guaranteed offer. It's available on every single UK and Irish race from 8 AM on the day of the race. If you take a price and the SP is bigger, Bet365 will pay you out at the bigger odds. Full terms and conditions can be found on the website. So, there's only one place to start. It is going to be the Derby. Like I touched on earlier, I had to do a runner's guide for the race yesterday, and I could make a case for around 10 horses in this. I don't think I've looked forward to a Derby as much as this one for many years.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we'll discuss the various strands, but when that's the case, it can produce a big field, and that further muddies the waters from the 10 or 12 runners, with maybe Aidan having 4 with one standout, or I think in this instance, you could make a case for lots and lots of different horses. The main thing for me is whether, I'm a former accountant, okay, so I'm about as boring as they come in that regard. The accountant's horse is Delacroix, because he is the one that has had...
That's so true.
Yeah. It is. He ticks all the boxes. He's followed a tried and tested pattern. He's done it workmanlike without being flashy. He'd make a great auditor, and he should be there and thereabouts. But he does lack a little bit of the wow factor, as I found when I was an accountant and I was younger. It's not the greatest sort of chat-up line, if you like. So as a result, you need something that's a little bit more dynamic. And the most dynamic horse in the field, even though I struggle to make any sort of case given the prep, is the Lion in Winter, I think. And that's the question. And the jockey decision will be very, very interesting. Whether the Lion in Winter will show his true colours in the Irish Derby, one more step down the road, I'm not sure. But
it's going to be interesting. Pricing-wise, Bet365 have Delacroix at 9-4, Ruling Court, the 2,000 guineas winner, at 4-1, Pride of Arras, the Dante winner, 4-1, the Lion in Winter, that Richard just touched on, at 6-1, Demisis, 11-1, Lambourne, 12-1, and the supplemented Midak at 14-1. So you can make lots of cases. Delacroix, I suppose, the negatives, like, will he stay? We've got a bit of rain forecast at Epsom over the next few days. The fact that there's a Dabawi and Dabawi's record in the Derby, would either of those be a concern for you?
Well, I'll bow to Lydia's greater pedigree knowledge in this area. The question mark, the only other one was by Galileo, wasn't it? The out of the dam, that stayed 1.6 miles.
Grateful, yeah.
But obviously there is less stamina on Dubarvis. I haven't watched his races thinking, ooh, I don't think you'll stay. But to be fair, he has tended to win them with a turn of foot. It's not his fault they haven't been quickly run. So would you have concerns on the pedigree side?
I think he will stay.
Yeah.
I can see why you raise it, though. I think the thing that will really help him in that regard as well is that he's very uncomplicated, and that's going to be a big asset around Epsom.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier about having to have the tactical speed to be able to retain a position and then be able to stay. I mean, he's going to be able to retain his position, and this is going to be really important, particularly if we do get a really big field. You know, there's going to be some hard luck stories. There always are in the Derby, and it'll be interesting. I think he's got a lot of assets in his favour, but Richard summed him up perfectly. You know, he is. Yeah, he'd wear a belt and braces.
He would.
Delacour,
polo neck jumper, or round neck jumper, tank top actually, wouldn't it? Tank top.
Okay then, ruling court, 2,000 guineas winner.
Yeah.
You rarely get those going off 4-1 for a derby off the back of one of those successes. Again, stamina doubts.
Yes.
Pride of Arras, I don't think you can have any stamina doubts. I think he's definitely going to stay, but is he going to have that tactical speed to get himself in that position?
I think he will do.
Yeah.
I think he will do. I think I would have wondered about that had the Dante not happened.
Yeah.
But now that I've seen him in the Dante, and it was interesting again, Rafe Beckett's comments afterwards were very interesting about him. So he was surprised about every element of Pride of Arras. You know, Harry took the preliminaries. He was really sort of straightforward. And York is something of a test beforehand. It's one of the ones that you find out a little bit more prior to the Derby. The Derby is obviously another step again. You've got, you know, it's a race run around a fairground, so you know there's a lot going on for young horses. He was surprised that he was able to show that turn of foot. He was surprised that he was forward enough to be able to win. There were a load of things that surprised him. I suppose the flip side to that is he now going to revert, you know, as a result of that? This is only a horse we've seen twice, to hit the character that more likely seeing at home. So that he comes with that sort of slight niggle in the back of your head that the trainer has some worries, but I can interpret it positively. Everything that he did at York, and I see the Lion in Winter. I mean, clearly that's not him. He pulled too hard. We know that he's got a lot more ability than that. But I just think we're looking past the obvious, which is, you know, Pride of Arras is just a very good horse. I can see Demisius staying on strongly. I think I wonder whether he quite has the tactical speed for Epsom, but I like him a lot. And Ruling Court, I do have stamina doubts with. But again, the thing that will help him, a bit like Delacour, is he's very uncomplicated. I mean, the fact that William Buick was able to make that move that ultimately got Kieran Schumacher and Field of Gold in trouble in the 2,000 guineas, that was because the horse is, you know, really responds, is willing and tries hard and you know, does what you're asking him to do. He is straightforward. So again, he will give himself every chance of staying, but there is that. For me, I think it's a doubt.
Yeah, I think it's his demeanour slightly worries me, in the sense that, not his race demeanour, but he went to post early at Newmarket with the red hood. He got worked up, was in the Acom behind the line in winter when he came over from York. That sort of frittering away of stuff. And also, of course, he did outspeed Field of Gold. And we've just gone on to say Field of Gold then turned a good turn of foot. You know, that ability to show that turn of foot just makes me worry about stamina, not on pedigree or anything like that, but just on race demeanour.
Yeah, I thought it was more that he was kind of, I feel like he was sort of, it was the ride really. It was
he didn't do anything until he was asked. So you see,
it was kind of like an 11 out of 10 ride, wasn't it, from William Buick? It was kind of like, you know, force this horse that is going to respond and is straightforward at this point. And he was just ahead of the game at every point from that point onwards. But yeah, I take the point about the red hood though. That will be something that will be tested. Yeah,
and it was steady to the guineas, you know. So it was a good turn of foot, good ride, but he did produce that turn of foot. Whether you can quite hold on to it. Now, see, the Dante is the one. If you like, something that's already said, which is the back of my mind for the Dante, is it's the one that's more muddling. It's the one where, you know, they've sat a little bit and they've, you know, Lion and Winter's over raced. My feeling is that it's the race I would like to take on, purely in terms of what they've achieved. A little bit for the reason you've said, Lydia, about there was a lot of surprise as to how good Pride of Arras was. 3 or 4 of those, and it's difficult because where do you pin the Lion in Winter as to what he's achieved, and to when you give them numbers, have all improved significantly. Now, it's not beyond the realms of possibility with them all being lightly raced 3-year-olds, but you are asking for a clump of them to have improved, and then you're trying to sift through the clump to work out which are the ones that have got slightly more talent. And it clearly is Pride of Arras, I think, because he's got tactical speed, he went through the gap. But my worry is that in my mind, the Dante might be £5 lower in my mind than other people's, and so the jump that might be required at Epsom might still just be too great at this point.
Yeah, I suppose the race probably went around Wimbledon Hawkeye, didn't it? He was the solid yardstick that had ran in the Craven, the Guineas and the Dante, and it's whether that is good enough to deal with the likes of Delacroix.
And you are, understandably, with lightly raced 3-year-olds, you are pricing on potential, aren't you? You're not suggesting that the Dante form is going to be good enough to beat a classic winner,
of course,
or Delacroix at this point. But the potential is obviously greater. But my mind are just slightly concerned about the Dante as a whole. And look, if I'm wrong, the horse that probably is massively overpriced compared to the others, because he is not flashy in the slightest, but could be one of those candidates to fill the frame at a big price, is Wimbledon Hawkeye, funnily enough.
He's not entered, he was taken out.
Oh, was he? Was he? He wasn't in the entries yesterday?
He was taken out.
Now, that's really weird, isn't it? Because that whole season has gone full circle, hasn't it? Because we weren't going to run in the Craven, we weren't going to run in the Guineas. We did run in the Dante, which is where we were going to start. We were going to run in the Derby, so I hadn't even bothered checking yesterday. He came out.
He hasn't grown very much, is he? I don't. He's the kind of horse who's hanging on to his excellent form as a 2-year-old, but he isn't upgrading it. And there are horses that are physical specimens that I think are going past it. And Pride of Arras would be one. He is a good-looking horse. When he made his debut at Sandown, again, he was the horse that kind of you looked at him and thought, no, that is a quality animal. And then he comes into the Dante. I take your point. It is a messy race, but this is a horse that, as you said, is going to stay a mile and a half. The family love Epsom as well, So if he's able to if he is a stayer, and yet he was able to do that, it could be that he's a lot better than the Dante actually.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And the gallop this morning, you don't learn a great deal, but fair play to Demisers, came down the hill very, very well. The one I couldn't have was a stable companion. I think it's a Ledger horse.
Yeah. I think we've got a couple of Ledger horses, him and Lambourne.
Lambourne, yes. Lambourne is the other one.
Yeah,
I think both. Yeah, I do think both of those. Stanhope Gardens.
Interesting prep.
Yeah.
But obviously has that 2-year-old form with Delacroix, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I understand he's had a setback, but
Well, he must have done, because they needed that race in order to get him to the Derby. I mean, I think that's a reasonable surmisation to make, isn't it?
Yeah, but a mild conditions race, a 3-runner race at 2 to 11 probably isn't the ideal prep for it. But if I had to force you for a selection,
Pride of Arras.
Yeah, 4-1 with Bet365.
I'm the accountant, Delacroix. I'm worried it'll be beaten by a Pride of Arras or a Lion in Winter bouncing back. The Lion in Winter is impossible to know. I mean, honestly, it's not the way I select horses at top level, is when they've blown out the time before and they've been done by City of Troy, August Rodin. But the difference for me for that was that the Dante was closer.
Yeah.
And it's not a trial they've liked in the past because they've said it's too close. So even by Aidan standards.
And when we come to tomorrow, when we get our 72-hour declarations, do you think you'll have more on board? Or do you think he'll be tempted to ride the Lion in Winter? Because the market vibes around the Lion in Winter have been a bit crazy, haven't they?
Yeah, they have.
Really well backed, and you thought, oh, okay, he must have done something at home that's done really well, and then suddenly he's drifted back out again.
And the vibes from Cornwall have yo-yoed as well. So, all the Lion in Winter, then after the Dante, no, Delacroix. And you can see people sort of going, what is happening here?
Yeah, that market. Yeah, I referred to back my earlier point. You see that if you're Ryan Moore, you'd spend all night trying to, in your youth, drinking with a young lady that you might wish to see more of, and you get done by the bloke at the Hell's Angel that was around the corner of the big motorbike. And around the corner of the big motorbike is Lion in Winter, because that's the engine, that's the one that could be, that I just think that's the only horse at the moment. Pride of Arras, you probably feel in a similar vein that could be really good, whereas obviously my Dante form just isn't quite, feeling at the moment isn't quite as high. But it would be a good story, to be fair, if Pride of Arras won. The Ackroyds have bred, I think they've got 4 or 5 horses at the stud, and they've had fantastic success with them. So that would be nice.
It would be. It'd be a lovely story. Yeah.
Yeah, they could have a Royal Ascot winner in there as well.
Yeah, they've got
well, I can't remember the name, the one that's been gelded.
Yes,
It
yeah.
was really impressive last time.
Yes, the one that it begins with A.
Yeah.
I can't judge it. Sorry.
That's right. It'll come back to us in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly right. Amalak?
Maybe. Possibly. We'll move on to the Oaks anyway. 9 entries at this stage. It's not going to be a big field like we're expecting for the Derby. The 1,000 guineas winner, Desert Flower, heads the market currently at 11-8 with Bet365. You then have the 3 Aidan O'Brien fillies: 9-2 Mini Hawk, 11-2 Giselle, 13-2 Whirl. Elwatine, who's been supplemented for it, obviously ran really well in the 1,000 guineas, finished 4th, is 9-1. It's 10-1 Bar. Richard, over to you. Desert Flower, we discussed everything in the Derby. Will it stay? Will it not? Will Desert Flower stay?
Yes, I think unless she gets driven mad by an Aidan O'Brien horse, because I think she settles very well. I think she's quite straightforward. It wasn't a vintage 1,000 guineas, let's be honest about it. She won it in workmanlike fashion. But she didn't display that ruling court turn of foot that makes me worry about him staying. She won it by just doing it, really, without turning a hair. So it wouldn't be a bigger negative for me to put me off the fact that she is, of that group of horses, the best. Her 2-year-old form was very, very good, and she would be an entirely solid winner of the race. And she is the best filly going into it. The concern, I suppose, if you're Godolphin, is Aidan's going to have 3, and you will be tagged. You will. It's, you know, you can send one forward and sit alongside, just pester, see where you're drawn. That does complicate it slightly, but the fact there's only 9 in the field, at the moment, she is the one that is to beat, surely.
Yes,
Yeah.
Amalok, by the way, I looked it up.
Amalok, thank you.
She is the one to beat, clearly, and she was given a sort of stayer's ride in the 1,000 guineas. I think they all landed in a bit of a heap behind her, and the really good horse needed the run, like Victoria. And I'm not convinced that she's going to get the 1.5 miles. I think there's a big question mark about that. She's by Knight of Thunder. Admittedly, he is the sire of Estrange as well, isn't he? So, you know, maybe that's just something that we haven't yet explored. But, you know, there's a lot of quick horses in her pedigree. And the other positive is she settles well. She's very uncomplicated. She sat in the position that William Buick wanted her in the 1,000 guineas and bossed the race and controlled it. It was all very straightforward. So that will help her a lot. The tagging point, I mean, if she was less bomb-proof mentally, you might be more worried. But you're right. I mean, there is the potential for her to be man-marked, essentially. I like Giselle, and it's something intangible, really. It's just watching her come around the bend at Lingfield and just how she cornered and how straightforward it was, and there was just something about that that you know quite often a pour over form and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes you kind of just get a feeling, and there's just something so easy about that. And I know it wasn't a deep race, it was just a 3-runner race, but there was something very easy about it. I just liked the way she did it. And clearly Aidan O'Brien has always been talking about her very positively. He's got a real stayer in Mini Hawk, I think. And Whirl is obviously also a very good horse, improved a lot from the Park Express to the Musadora. I don't know, I'm just leaning towards Giselle. But again, it's where Ryan Moore goes will give you the tell about which of the 3 it really is. If we're going to judge it on the yak from the yard, it is Giselle. But might it be another one? I don't know.
Well, last year, even when Bedtime Story and Fairy Godmother were winning, they were kind of saying, "Oh, we've got another one at home," and that was Giselle. And I think she's favourite every single one of her starts, and she's got this huge reputation. It's whether she channels that energy in the right way.
Yeah.
And I thought Ryan Moore would have learnt a lot around her, even though it was a below par race.
Yeah, she was wanting to battle. I mean, she's obviously a very strong filly, isn't she? But you know, he was in control, and it was just how she flowed down the hill. I really liked it. I'm always very sceptical of my other car is a Porsche. You know, that sticker that people used to put on their Metros. But obviously with Coolmore, usually it's true.
Yeah, and it doesn't always work. James Owen obviously said it around Lavender Hill Mob,
yes,
didn't he?
Yes,
well, that's true.
Yeah.
I think
so it doesn't always work.
Yeah.
In Aidan's case, it says my other car is also a Porsche. It's like, The thing is, Giselle, she is a striking-looking filly.
Yeah.
And so as a result, there would have been a question mark had she not been to Lingfield as to her ability to handle the track, which was ticked. This is where, outside of Desert Flower, you know, we did some sectional stuff on ITV after the Musidora, where the initial comment about Whirl would head for the French version just didn't really stack up.
No, doesn't on pedigree either.
No, and she just looked like an out-and-out galloper in what was a really solidly run race. Now, part of you then, when she lines up, wants to think, oh, puff your chest down, think, but of course that doesn't mean she's going to run any faster. Pretty solid to make the frame. And of the others, Revoir, just because it's a Julian Richmond-Watson horse that makes a late appearance at Nottingham, where they always do, and I thought there was more to come on the last run. I could see her being third or fourth. Albertine I wasn't as convinced about. I know it's lightly raced. I think Sheikh Issa was so hoping to have a runner that Falakea, eventually the sense took over.
Yes.
And possibly the way you sold it to yourself was to stick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not convinced Albertine's going to stay based on how.
Just she was in that ruck of the guineas that
she was, but she's very lightly raced, so I can give her. I can, in my head, I can think that she might improve quite a bit from that. But yeah, stamina is the.
Minnie Hawk looked a bit slow, I thought.
Yeah.
No disrespect to her.
Yeah. Well, I thought the most interesting part of the Musidora was the fact that Ryan Moore kind of took a peek under the bonnet saw how much was left at the finish in order to, in theory, make up his mind on I think what he's going to ride. And yeah, well, the market doesn't know, and I certainly don't know.
Do you like Whirl?
I didn't before the Musidora. I thought she was slow. I couldn't have her at all in that Musidora. But watching it, being so negative about her, and you know when you watch a race and you go, I could not have her at all, and then you watching it 2 furlongs out going, I've got this badly wrong. So it kind of made the performance more impressive to me, the fact that I was so negative around her reappearance going into the race.
But isn't that something that punters generally just fear too much? And, you know, even on TV when you're asked for an opinion, you know, that's your opinion. And you're based on certain criteria, like mine is on the Dante. If Pride of Arras wins and Demisis is second, then I'm clearly wrong. But that's fine, because you reevaluate and learn as you go forward. That's how you improve everything. So I do think you have to stick by opinions, otherwise it just becomes all watered down and...
It's dull, isn't it? I mean, it's,
you say Giselle, it's something that captures your imagination there. I think the advantage for Whirl is that, if you're right, Lydia, Desert Flower is beaten through lack of stamina, and hence it's a strongly run race. I think that suits her. I do think if you approach races looking at a favourite and thinking, where's the Achilles heel? There's no point in then choosing another horse for whom it's also an Achilles heel.
Yes.
You actually want to go to the other end of the spectrum and think, oh, if Desert Flower gets tag teamed and they go a relentless gallop, what I saw at York suggested Whirl would still be galloping at the end.
Yeah.
And maybe Revoir, because of the back catalogue of that family, would also, having been green early, be staying on at the end. So if I was going to oppose Desert Flower, which at the moment I'm not intending to, they would be the two that I could see plausible race scenarios that might undo her.
Are you thinking that Minnie Hawk will be the one that goes forward to use that excess of stamina?
I'm feeling Minnie Hawk would try to.
Try to. Bless her, she's not that bad.
No, it's just that, no, but she was a Lamborn.
Yeah.
If you
know what I mean.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
you would be
yeah.
taking
We
her
are
out
agreeing.
of her comfort zone
Yeah.
to try and match her. And that's possibly the interesting thing is I think they might use Whirl, actually.
Could do.
And so I think then it becomes interesting as to whether Ryan does choose Giselle. I'm not suggesting Whirl will be sacrificed in a classic, but if he didn't ride Whirl, I would then be worried that she was the tag team. And hence she might cause Desert Flower to lose the war, but she also loses the war, if that makes sense.
It does.
Because of the way she's been utilised.
Interesting. So Desert Flower for you?
Desert Flower at the moment, I haven't...
Definitely Giselle.
Yeah.
For Lydia. Right, we'll quickly move on to the Coronation Cup. Calandagan is currently 8-13 with Bet365 at the time of recording. Odds on to win his first Group 1 of his career. He has some fantastic runs, a win at Royal Ascot, and those second place finishes in the Juddmonte, the Champion Stakes, were good runs. Were they justifiable to be this short of a price in this rate?
I think so. I mean, I think from what we've seen, he is a cut above. I think the horse that I would have as the main threat is Giavolotto, rather than anything else. I also think that El Riffa could be slightly overpriced. I think he's totally unexposed over 1.5 miles still. I still think he's got some quality in him. I'd be less. I think Jan Bruegel is. I mean, I thought he looked very quirky, but like a big bag of talent when he won the Gordon. And then I thought when he won the St Leger, this is going to be fine. He's now learned how to race. It's all very straightforward. And then I know it was seasonal debut, and I know he was going into a pace that was being controlled ahead of him, but he looked awkward as hell last time, didn't he? And Epsom and awkward. I mean, so I've having been a big fan of that horse, I've gone right off him. I really rate Calandagan. The way that he made ground behind City of York when City of York controlled the International, I just thought that was so special. City of Troy, sorry. City. I just thought that was so special what he did there, and it's extraordinary that he hasn't managed to win a Group 1. Yeah. This is a much weaker Group 1 than any of those races in which he's put up really good performances. He just looked a bit rusty. He wasn't suited by the race in the Shima Classic. It was certainly when it was a sprint finish. It wasn't really for him. Unknown, of course, is clearly the track and will he handle it. I think Giavolotto has proved that he is a much more versatile kind of horse than he might have been pigeonholed before Sheen Murphy started riding him. And clearly I think he will put up the main danger to Calandagan. And as I say, if you're, I don't think I'm going to be having a bet here because I suspect the race might cut off a bit, and I expect Calandagan to win. But El Riffa, I think, can get a good race this season, and I'm waiting for him to be in the right set of circumstances. I'm sure that's 1.5 miles, so I'll be following him quite closely. Whether this is the day, I think not with Calandagan in it.
Yeah, El Riffa currently 16-1 with Bet365. Obviously won that Group 1 in Germany.
It's too big, don't you think?
I do. I thought it was a really interesting race. I like You Got To Me as a filly. The fact that they're coming here first time and given how keen she was in some races last season would be a slight concern for me. But she obviously ran well at the course.
Yeah, she handled the track. And she handled the track, which is an asset that some of these haven't proven. I mean, Bellum Justin's proven that he handles it as well.
Yeah, that's one I'd throw in. So I very much agree with your synopsis there, so I'm not going to add and waste time by just repeating it. The problem for Bellum Justin fans is we're not going to get 8, I don't think.
No. I think we're already
Ancient
down
Wisdom's
to
probably going to come out
suppose,
unless there's a lot of rain.
Yeah.
But Bellum Justin, I do think, is the potential to outrun the odds if it breaks apart. I 100% echo with Jan Bruegel. Calandagan, it would be really nice because obviously the Derby's named after the Almaqam, so that would be a really nice story. And I suppose the Group 1 thing around Calandagan's neck is slightly unfair, given that there was plenty of Group 1s he couldn't run in last year, so because he's gelding. So as a result, maybe the ideal opportunity. Your point about taking ground off City of Troy, 100% right. Calandagan actually probably emerged with more credit out of that in terms of enhanced reputation. But their hand was a little bit forced there as to where they could go against their own age group. So, yeah, I hope Calandagan wins. I think it would be good. Giavolotto for me definitely would be the. You're right about Jan Bruegel. It's one of those where you feel they're going to learn, and then you realise they're just
They're not.
No.
No.
They're just still going to go out and get slammed on a Saturday night and stagger home. They're not going to, until they're 5 years old, by which time the talent's gone and they've missed the boat. But he's got a fantastic engine. But God, Epsom's a really interesting choice for him.
It's odd, isn't it?
Yeah.
He would, if I was giving instruction to jockeys, they would.
Good luck.
Great big red flashing light about going anywhere near him on anything else, because he might not help your cause.
I agree. I'm going to come back to you for anything else over the Epsom meeting. We've got the oddschecker, Princess Elizabeth II Stakes, the Diomed Stakes, the Dash, various handicaps through it. I'll kind of throw to you for a couple that you're interested in, saving your best bet, obviously, to the end.
Okay, so I'll save the best bet until well out of it. Princess Elizabeth, I was just drawn back to the fact that Royal Dress was extremely unlucky in the race last year.
Yes.
But to be fair, this is a race where historically they are that level and they do struggle to get out of each other's way, and this could be a big field. So I just approach that with an element of caution, but it is just worth pointing out. I would just like, the Woodcut features a very interesting horse in Title Roll. Now, I wanted to mention this just in a slightly wider context about the 2-year-old race in which Title Roll ran in. Title Roll was beaten by Humidity, who's made the news in the last 24 hours by being purchased by Wathnan from Cheveley Park. Humidity is a full brother to Holloway Boy. So I would imagine would go to the Chesham, like Holloway Boy is qualified through Ulysses, I think it is. Title Roll finished second, $500,000 breeze-up purchase, and the two of them pulled clear. 4 have run out of that race subsequently. 7th, 10th, 11th have all won, and the 14th was beaten a short head. It is an above-average race. Title Roll ran second in it. I thought it was a Royal Ascot. I was amazed to see the horse in the field, but the fact they've chosen to enter surely means that there's some element of intent there. And the current price as we sit here, I think was round about, well, actually, let you tell me.
6 to 1.
Yeah, I can't, if he lines up on the day, I would struggle to see him jumping at anything like 6 to 1. It's going to be a very popular horse for people to tip based on what might prove completely erroneous 3 winners. And only 4 have run out that race so far. He's very, very interesting, and I would point you in the direction of that race as a whole, but certainly Title Roll for the Wood Cup.
Only word of caution is no current jockey booking on the BHA site, but...
I'm surprised he was entered, but the fact he's a breeze-up horse might explain it, because you're probably keener to get a return with a horse that's been pretty well drilled. I didn't expect him to see him in the entries. I have to admit, I was quite surprised, but I would wait until declarations. You know, it's easy to get carried away with a big price about a non-runner, but that ain't a great deal of help, is it? But if he was jocked up, or if he gets declared, I think he's very interesting.
Excellent. Lydia, same to you?
So obviously I'm going to the 1.5 mile handicap on on Derby Day. Like a moth to a flame. I really like Sam Hawkins. I think he's very, very progressive. That improved performance last time. I think he's going to really enjoy this test again. So I'm sticking with him as he goes up through the ranks. Go on.
I think I might be wrong. Has he in form? Has he ever run at Epsom? But I think he was the galloping companion of the thing that unseated at the start from Richard Hannon's
Yes,
yard.
you might be right. Yes.
Derby Gallops Morning?
Yes.
Those horses are imprinted on my mind because you get them very late when you're trying to research them. But I'm sure I've called him somewhere doing a gallop, and I just wonder, was it Voyage that ran?
Yeah, it was Voyage, that unseated at the start.
So he might have been
He
there.
might well have been, because obviously he was with Richard Hannon last season, so it could well have been.
And, whether that makes any difference
he hasn't
or
run
not.
it. He hasn't run it.
But I have a funny feeling he might have been there.
Okay.
Just as an
how
aside. I
interesting.
don't know. Yeah,
Right.
whether you believe those things do you any good or not, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty certain he has been there on the gallop mode.
Excellent. Perfect. Right. Unless we've got anything else to add, and we'll be back in a second for our best bets of the meeting. Before we get into those best bets of the meeting, just to let you know of a free-to-play 6 horses challenge. It's available every weekend with free spins on offer if you get 2 or 3 selections correct. Prize pools available for 5 or 4 correct predictions, as well as a jackpot for all 6. Terms and conditions apply. Lydia, I'm going to come for you first for your best bet of the meeting.
I've got a head-heart dichotomy here. Do I go for the head Sam Hawkins, or do I go for the heart Giselle? I'm going to go for the heart Giselle. I just think there's something there for me, and I like the way she flowed down the turn at Lingfield. I think she's going to be suited by Epsom. I think the race could be set up to suit her really well. So yeah, Giselle to be something special.
Yeah, currently 11-2 at the time of recording with Bet365. Richard, to you.
Well, again, I'm slightly spoiled. If Title Roll land up in the Wood Cup, then I would go for Title Roll. But there is the element of having a non-runner at this stage. So I'm going to go for a horse called Badgery, who runs in the last race, the 540 at Epsom, who won the race in 2023 off a mark of 96, beating Polo 1, who obviously is a good, solid benchmark. Partnered by Holly Doyle. You are a hostage to fortune with the horse. It needs a strong race pace. It'll go post early. Big fan of Michael Harrington. He's one of those trainers that does very, very well with rarely good horses. Badgery's been going sort of every day for about the last 15 months. But off a mark of 88, Holly was immediately booked 5-day stage. She's ridden it for the last 2 years. I just think Badgery's quite interesting in the 540, but it's a white knuckle ride. They have to go fast, and the horse does have to be held up if you ride him any more further forward and he doesn't finish off.
Okay. No betting, obviously, at the time of recording. Mine is definitely the opposite to a hold-up horse. Mine comes in the 2:45 at Epsom on Saturday in the Dash. The Dash is obviously one of the fastest 5 furlongs, and there aren't many faster horses than Democracy Dilemma. Finished second in it last year on good to soft ground of a mark of 102, runs in it off a mark of 105 this year. Dream Composer beat him last year, but he's £6 better off this year, as well as the fact that Joe Levy doesn't claim £5 off that rival. Stand out 10 to 1 with Bet365 at the time of recording. Democracy Dilemma, I thought would go really well in the dash. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode of Racing Weekly, brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. Rishi and I'll be back next Friday rather than Tuesday for our Royal Ascot preview, where we'll be in the company of Andy Holding. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.